What's going on, everybody? I was here anyway, so let's start 10 seconds early. Why not? Welcome into this all new happy hour. Thanks so much for being here. Of course, I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Per usual, super chats will go to the top of the list. I will try to get to as many member chats as I possibly can. And we'll try to get to as many chats in general as I can. Looks like we have some great questions already in the chat. We'll get to, again, as much as I possibly can. Probably will be here about 45 to 50 minutes today, so not quite a full happy hour. Do have the summer shandy today. Summer's coming to an end, so I had to give one more summer shandy run before we get to Oktoberfest season. But hope you are all doing well. Hope you guys are all set for a great weekend. Hopefully we get a more competitive, fun preseason week 3 than we did in preseason week 2. I think we will. We'll obviously be at the game, Lambeau Field. What more could you want? I guess other than maybe a regular season game, but either way, should be a ton of fun, and hope you guys are kicking off the weekend in all the right ways. So cheers to all of you. And with that, let's get started. All right, Chris, how real of an option is Zane Anderson, who you mentioned is on kickoff duties both ways when there's Catan, Johnson Jr., McKinney, Bullard, and Evan Williams? Chris, I tried doing some back of the napkin math as I was on my way to the meet and greet yesterday over at the distillery, with everyone. And I'm really trying to find a way for Zane to make it, trying to find a way for Christian Welch to make it, Brenton Cox to make it. Like, they have more good players than they have open roster spots. And certainly some of their injuries could play a factor here as well. Andre Dillard, AJ Dillon, Tyler Davis. I think those injuries could play a massive part with some of those guys potentially going on IR. But you get into some really interesting roster crunch, sort of numbers. I think the 3 quarterbacks really kind of affects what you can keep at different positions. I think depending on if you want to go with 9 or 10 offensive linemen, if you want to keep that 6th wide receiver, which I think they're going to want to, like, all of these end up robbing from other positions. And if you want to get to keeping 6 off-ball linebackers for a Christian Welch or a 6th safety in Zane Anderson, that makes it really, really difficult. Now, there's multiple ways to look at this. I feel like, I can't say this for certain, but what some teams will do, and I can say this for certain, I can't say if Green Bay does it or not, but what some teams will do is they'll give their special teams coach 4 roster spots. They'll say you get your kicker, your punter, your long snapper, and you can have one more player as a core special teams guy. Who do you want it to be? Dallin Leavitt, let's be real, he was not making it because of his safety ability, right? You never wanted to see that guy on the field as a safety, but they thought enough of him, at least for a period of time, that they kept him as a true special teams guy on Rich Bisaccia's squad. It felt like he got 4 guys, his 3 specialists and Dallin Leavitt. And now I'm wondering, does he still have that pull? Does he still get that spot? And if so, is that spot Zane Anderson? Is that spot Christian Welch? Is there somebody else who potentially gets it? And if Zane Anderson does make it, how does that affect everything else? I can't imagine any of those 5 safeties that you're mentioning, Catan, Johnson Jr., McKinney, Bullard, or Evan Williams, not making the team. But then it's going to be a lot harder to keep 3 quarterbacks. It's going to be a lot harder to keep 6 wide receivers. It could be extremely hard to keep 4 tight ends. Could be really hard to keep 10 offensive linemen, 5 defensive ends, 6 linebackers, whatever it might be. So those are going to be really difficult questions to have to answer. I do think Zane Anderson should be in the conversation. I really do. Not only is he a core special teamer, this is not a Dallin Leavitt. This is not somebody that can't play safety. In fact, I think he's had a really nice camp. He had that 3 interception day in mini camp. I thought he's, performed admirably as a defender. Now, it's not like you want him as one of your core starters at safety or anything like that, but can he be your 4th, 5th safety in a normal season? Yeah, I think he can. And he was a year ago. So I think he should be in the conversation. But again, the math gets very, very difficult when it comes to some of those extra players at different positions, just because they have so many players that they could and probably should keep on the roster right now. Sergey Carr, thank you so much for the super chat. What does the initial when does the initial 53 roster have to happen? Is there a deadline for that? There is. Tuesday. I believe it's 3 p.m. on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday is when that deadline is. If you're familiar with the Packers at all, usually they're one of the last teams to announce their releases. However, I will say one of the things that the beat does a tremendous job of every single year, guys like Bill Huber, Rob Domofsky, Ryan Wood, Matt Schneidman, all those guys, Tom Silverstein is usually heavily involved as well, is figuring out those releases as they happen. They do a great job of covering it. So we usually have a pretty good idea through the course of the day, but the Packers are usually one of the last teams that actually announce it on their own. But Tuesday, 3 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Eastern is when that deadline is. Thanks again, Sergey, for the super chat. Appreciate that a ton. Jason, same to you, $9.99. Appreciate that. That's awesome, man. After watching all these practices, has your opinion changed on the win-loss total for the year? And do you think we can realistically make the Super Bowl this year? I don't think practice has changed my mind one way or the other. I would say training camp and preseason for the most part has gone as I would have expected. I would have expected they performed better in that joint practice with Denver and even better in that preseason game. I thought that was a little bit disappointing just because I think they have the depth and the talent to not, even if you're not going to play your starters, to not get sort of blown out of the water like that. But overall, from what I've seen in practice, it's what I was hoping for and what I expected. And I think everything that I kind of had some belief towards, that they have really everything that they need on this roster, is what I still believe. And as far as a regular season prediction, I still think somewhere between like 10-7 and 11-6 is the most likely outcome for this team. I think it's going to be a very difficult division. I really do. But I think they absolutely have the opportunity to win the division. I think they absolutely have the opportunity to make a run at this thing. I think, winning a Super Bowl is a tough ask. That's a very tall task. But are they one of the handful of teams that has a puncher's chance at it? I think so. Are they going to need everything to go right from an injury standpoint, from their young players progressing, from their older players not regressing, and from players taking the appropriate actions that they need to be the best versions of themselves? Yeah. Does the special teams need to perform a lot better? And do they need a kicker to step up and actually start making kicks consistently? Yeah, probably. Do they need Jeff Hafley to be the answer at defensive coordinator and put together at minimum a top 10 defense? Yeah, they do. But do I think those things are at least within the realm of possibility? I also do. Again, I won't say I expect it. I'm not going to put him on this pedestal and be like, yep, Super Bowl or bust, or like it's now or never, last dance sort of thing. But you're in Green Bay, Super Bowl is the goal every year. And I firmly believe that should be the goal for this team. I think they believe that they can win it. And now it's just going out and doing it. And it's, again, going to be a very tall task. It is every single year. There are 32 teams that at least the vast majority of are very good at football. And there's a upper echelon of, 10 teams ish that are can beat anyone on any given week. And it just makes it very, very difficult. And, you can be like at San Francisco, right? San Francisco has so many homegrown players at so many key positions, so many big time elite players. They have a quarterback on a rookie contract. They had everything they need. One of the best offensive minds in all of football. And sometimes you still just run into Patrick Mahomes and you just, that's it, So that can be the situation. It's really, really difficult to win in this league, but I think Green Bay has every right to be in that conversation. All right, Omer, what do we got here, Omer? I've gone on a limb and predict the Packers will keep only Love and Pratt, risk Clifford to waivers. Do you think that is a scenario that's quite possible, Andy, that Clifford has a good shot for the practice squad? I do think that's possible. I really do. I don't necessarily know that it's likely. I think it's, maybe a coin flip, but I don't think Sean Clifford has shown enough right now to be like, yeah, let's make sure we completely, don't subject him to waivers and have a roster spot saved for him. If I were betting today, I think it's more likely that he's on the roster than that he's not. But I could see a world, especially if he struggles tomorrow and if Michael Pratt plays well, I absolutely could see a world in which it's Michael Pratt as the 2 and Sean Clifford either released and back on the practice squad. I also could see a world in which they trade a late round pick for a Taylor Heineke or someone like that and keep Michael Pratt as the 3 and move on from Sean Clifford. I don't think that's entirely out of the realm of possibility either, but I do think it's possible, just maybe not super likely at this point, Omer. Cheddarhead, thanks for the super chat. Following the stats on X, what's with kickers only kicking 5 field goals each practice? What else are they doing other than stretching? Why not kick 20 plus times? A lot of it is just to make sure that they are staying fresh through the course of the season. They are doing a lot of kicking off to the side as well, but we're not tracking the ones where there's not a full, line and rush and everything like that. And they're putting it out at a specific yard marker. So they are doing quite a bit of kicking off to the side, but you want to make sure that they, don't get any leg fatigue, don't suffer any injuries needlessly. And like whatever, I think they've each kicked like 70 some field goals so far. Like that's a good chunk of field. That's a lot to evaluate on. And again, those are the ones where there's actual like 11 on 11 on the field. It's a pressure situation. It's a field goal like, so I actually think they've done a pretty good job of pacing it out and getting those snaps at practice pretty much every single day while not wearing out their legs. And again, they are definitely working to the side as well with the long snappers and the punter on holding and, just trying to make it so that their timing and rhythm is consistent. So there's a lot more that goes into it. But as far as what we track, it's only when they do the 11 on 11 and actually have a full field goal unit that's out there. All right. What else we got here? See, I want to go back to some of those member chats. Richard, sorry. Have you ever seen Met rival scouts at Packers open practice? Are they easy to spot and how do the Packers deal with them? I have not talked to a rival scout. I did see once and talk to a CFL scout who was scouting the bottom of the roster for players who could potentially get cut and make it to the CFL. So I did talk to somebody there. They're not easy to spot and there's nothing Green Bay can do for an open practice. There could be Bears scout wearing full Bears gear in the front row. It is an open practice. As long as they're not videotaping anything, they have the right to be there. So and the Packers will send, scouts to different stuff as well. Just sort of, part of it, but it's not like Green Bay's doing anything super crazy in practices. And usually those scouts are there to scout talent. It's not necessarily to be like, what's Green Bay's game plan going to look like? Because they're not doing a lot of that stuff in the open practices. So it's just to look at talent, and it's really not that big of a deal. And I've never seen one, in person. Maybe they're there, but I definitely think that they do go, to those, but haven't interacted with any of them, especially now since I'm on the other side on the media sideline. Jason, I'm driving up from West Virginia for the home opener. Do you have any suggestions as far as fun things to do during the weekend or places to eat? Yeah, I think I get this just about every single one. I should just have this bookmarked by now. Let me see if I can find it really quick. I have a video that I did. Here we go. Got it. This one was easy. And this one was from the year ago. All right, perfect. So I'm going to bookmark this. So when people ask me this, sorry, where did I go? Here we go. Here we go. Post it in the comments. There's a video you can watch. It's technically like a full guide to Packers training camp, but in there is everything to do around Green Bay, best restaurants to eat at, sites to see, things to do that are Packers related, everything that's in there. So definitely make sure to check that out. And that is definitely an episode that I put together that I really enjoyed doing, that you can get. Again, it's training camp related, but it definitely works for games as well. So recommend checking that out. But Play Bistro, one of my favorite dinner places in Green Bay. I love Hinterland across from the stadium, of course. Chives is really good up towards the Howard area. If you want great pizza, Rustique in Howard as well is really, really good. And then, of course, just, your Packers Hall of Fame stadium tour. If you want to bring the kids somewhere, I think it's still open at that time on the weekends. Bay Beach is great. So there's a lot to do in the city, but definitely check out that episode I just put in the chat. All right. Heartbroken Hog. Okay, I'm home for work and ready to pour my drink. It's happy hour time. Heartbroken Hog, cheers to you, buddy. Thanks so much for being a member. All right, what else do we got? Doug, happy Friday, everyone. Drinking a Bell's Two-Hearted Ale this happy hour. What you drinking, Andy? I got the summer shandy going, like I said, last really shot at summer, but again, before we get to Oktoberfest season, very, very quick here. And cheers to you, my friend. All right, we went through Jason's. Gary, dumped the extra special teams guy, deep roster this season. So, here's the thing, Gary. I don't know if there's another chat that you had prior to this that was in relation to this. I think this is the interesting aspect, right? Do I think any of these guys, Zane Anderson, Christian Welch, like an Aaron Mosby, who can play a lot of special teams, Corey Ballantyne, Robert Rochelle, Malik Heath, Grant Dubose, who can both play teams. Do I think any of these guys individually, and I'm missing a few off the top of my head as well, but do I think any of them are like ultra important to the, overall core of the special teams? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. But can you release all of them? Can you release like all of those guys? Like, are you okay from a special team standpoint if Zane Anderson and Robert Rochelle and Christian Welsh and Aaron Mosby and Malik Heath and Grant Dubose and Tyler Davis, who's out hurt. If all of your core guys on special teams are gone, are you okay with that? Like that to me is the more interesting part of this. Like, I think any one of those guys, you're like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. But all of those guys are fringe roster guys. And you might end up, on an initial 53, not wanting to keep any of them. And that might be a tough ask for the special teams when you have guys like a Zane Anderson, who is playing a variety of different roles on teams. So I'm not saying that I would necessarily keep an extra special teams guy or whatever. I'm just saying these are definitely things that they're going to have to think about, because a lot of their best special teams guys are guys that are right on the fringe. And that's worth noting, or you just can't get too upset if Green Bay's got the 28th, 29th, 30th best special teams again. Well, if I'm Rich Bisaccia, I'm going to say, yeah, every single one of my core guys you cut right before the first game. Like, what do you want me to do? So these are definitely difficult decisions. Doug, it's entirely likely that we make further moves after cutdowns. Also, rarely is the first 53 the final 53. I think it's a little less likely this year. Let me put this a different way. Some of those times it's because you have to keep initial guys on your roster and then put them on IR. Whereas this year you can put 2 guys on IR right away. And I think the 2 potential there's 3, right? If Marshawn Lloyd, AJ Dillon, or Tyler Davis are not able to go week 1, I think those are guys they could put that initial IR designation on. I think it could end up being Dillon and Tyler Davis that gets that, but we'll have to wait and see. But that could make it so that there's a few less moves, but there absolutely could be a guy that they want off of waivers. There could absolutely be, some sort of trade that happens on deadline day. There's a lot that I think could happen. So I'm very interested to see how this shapes out. And then, to your point too, Doug, it's not like cut down day is Tuesday and then the game is Friday, right? You have a week and a half before that first game. So there's plenty of opportunity to tweak your roster after that first cut down date. If there's other players that are out there that you want to get a look at or whatever it might be, definitely some ways to manipulate it in a variety of different ways. How worried should we be about the lack of offensive line depth? I say this all the time, Ian. There are 32 teams that want more offensive line depth right now. And that's just the name of the game. We are in the really, I think, a golden era of pass rushers, and we are in a weak era of depth along the offensive line. Most teams have a decent, solid 5 that they can go to. Not all teams, but most teams. But then after that, there are only a handful of teams that have a couple backups that they feel like, yeah, we feel good about. And that's just, again, the state of the NFL right now. So I don't think you should lose sleep over it. I think Green Bay's in a fair enough position. I do think they have 7 that I think they're at least feeling somewhat comfortable with their starting 5. And let's just say that's Sean Ryan right now, Jordan Morgan, and Jacob Monk. I think they feel like they can get by with those 7 and not have to worry too much. I think then you get to the tackle positions, and we'll see who ends up making it. But I could see a world in which they feel semi-comfortable if it gets to like an 8th guy. If it's left tackle where Andre Dillard plays just left tackle, I don't think he can play right. I think it's been kind of a nightmare on the right, but he's been serviceable, kind of Yosh Nijman-like on the left. And then I could see Kadeem Telfort maybe being the guy on the right, or maybe it's a Travis Glover. But that you're all of a sudden going like 8-9 deep at that point. And I think if it comes to that point, like, again, most teams just don't have that sort of depth along the O-line. So I wouldn't sweat about it. I wouldn't worry about it more than any other team should. But every team is sweating and worrying about it to some extent, just because there's not a lot of depth along the offensive line in the NFL right now. Angry casual fan, do you think the Packers lack superstar players that are top 5 at their positions? I think they need guys to take jumps in that area. Yes. And there's 2 ways I talk about this a decent amount. To me, there's 2 ways that you can win a Super Bowl. One is that you just have big time star power that gets you there. And I think the Chiefs, to some extent, they have some really good players too. Don't get me wrong. But like, this has been a team that, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and especially Chris Jones, like those 3 are just complete alphas. And then you add in, of course, guys like a Creed Humphrey here and there. I obviously Tyreek Hill before, Tyrann Mathieu when he was playing really well during his stage in KC. It has been a very top heavy group of just elite players that kind of can get you a huge chunk of the way. I think the other way is to just not have any weaknesses anywhere, be very strong everywhere, have depth everywhere, and just have a really, really good team where there's not one obvious specific place to attack or one specific obvious weakness. And I do think Green Bay is closer to that, and that you can still win that way. And I think, but it would be awesome if Jordan Love as the highest paid quarterback, could get into that top 5 conversation of quarterbacks. It'd be awesome if Josh Jacobs would end the season in the top 5 of running backs. It'd be awesome if a Tucker Kraft or a Luke Musgrave could get in the top 5 of tight ends. Be great if Elton Jenkins or a Zach Tom could get in the conversation of guard or potentially tackle at their respective positions. Be great if a wide receiver would take that jump. It'd be awesome if Rashawn Gary could get into the top 5 of edge rushers. If Kenny Clark could get to that top 5 in defensive tackles, which is a really tough ask, especially at this stage of his career with all the talented defensive tackles out there. Maybe Quay Walker can't get to top 5, but can he get to top 10 at linebacker? Can Jair be a top 5 corner in the league? I think he has every right to be. Can he go out and do it this year? Can Xavier McKinney be a top 5 safety? I think there's a lot of potential players out there, right? And you don't need all of them. You could just use, if 4 or 5 of those guys go out and do it, you're in a awesome position. But at the same token, I look at this roster overall and I don't see a ton of weaknesses. Kicker is a weakness right now. Offensive line depth, like a lot of other teams, is a potential issue. But overall, I think there's a lot to like and a lot of depth and a lot of talent on this team. And I think they can win it because of that. Jade Heath, how many times do you think you'll hear we overpaid for Love this season? I try to tune all that stuff out. Everyone is either underpaid or overpaid. There's extreme takes on everything all over the place. It's just a constant stream of crazy takes everywhere. And you just got to do your best to ignore it. They made the deal with Love at the time. I don't think anyone was, I shouldn't say that. I think some Packer fans were a little wary of it, understandably, but I think overall it was the right move to make. There's no other real alternative. They're trusting him to continue to get better. And the quarterback salaries are only going to go up from here. So yeah, it looks exponential now. In like 2 years, it'll look like a very normal quarterback deal. And just kind of the way that it works at quarterback. And I'm sure we'll hear some of it, but hopefully Jordan just goes out and has a great year and we don't even have to think about that aspect of it. All right. Let's see. Just double checking everything here. Omar, lots of teams needing wide receiver. Wonder if anyone is knocking and if Goot would consider trading one. Listen, he's not going to trade any of the top 4. All right. And I don't know that anyone else really has trade value. Like, I just think that teams have good wide receivers. Yes, there's some teams that need them, but once you get to like that next tier, like everyone has wide receivers at that next tier. What you're looking for is guys that can be a legit 1, 2, or 3 wide receiver. And if some team thought Bo Melton could, maybe they could make a crazy offer. But I think Goody just says no, because I think he knows that he's going to need all those guys through the course of the season. And it's one of Green Bay's superpowers is their depth at wide receiver, and that they can go up and have mismatches no matter what. And even if they're down 2 wide receivers, like if all of a sudden Watson and Dobbs go down, like I don't think anyone's really sweating if you have to go out there with Reed and Wicks and Melton. I think you're going to be like, yeah, we still have 3 guys that can go win their matchups, plus Musgrave, Kraft, Josh Jacobs. You still have enough on offense. Whereas you trade away, Bo Melton or one of those guys, and now 2 guys go down and you don't have that same feel. So I don't think so. And I don't think Malik Heath or Grant Dubose at this point are going to garner a ton of consideration. Maybe a future, conditional 7th, but again, teams usually have wide receivers in that caliber. Heartbroken Hog, Andy, it's just time to accept we are going to have to average to below average kicking this season. And do we draft sign a UDFA next offseason? I think everything will be on the table for next offseason and drafting a player, signing a free agent, etc. if they don't find a kicker this year. But sign me up for average kicking. If we can get average kicking this season, I'll be more than happy with that. But who knows? I will say this, sometimes weird things happen and a kicker gets hot at the right time and they go in the season and they have a great year, and maybe they're not a great kicker, but maybe they get the right kicks at the right moments. And maybe the majority of them are 44 and under and he goes on as a great year. Who knows? But yeah, I think there's certainly some trepidation for the kicking position as we get closer and closer to week 1 playing against the Eagles. 14 years and no Super Bowl is approaching Cowboys territory. We need change. Super Bowls are hard, man. Super Bowls are really, really, really difficult. So literally the Minnesota Vikings have never won one. The Detroit Lions have never won one. It's, you theoretically, right? You should win one every 32 years. So they got 18 more years to stay on pace. It is a very, very difficult thing to do. And especially when you get some of these dynasties like Tom Brady and the Patriots, they throw a wrench into things when when Brady wins 7, right? Like, it's going to make it harder. When the Chiefs win, 3 Super Bowls now, 2 or 3, whatever it's been. They are really freaking good. That's going to make it harder for every other team. So, yeah, you hope Green Bay keeps trending in the right direction. You hope the next one's right around the corner. But man, these are really, really, really difficult to try to win. Dan, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that a ton. Someone would have paid the money for Love to be their quarterback, so I'm glad it was us. I've said it all off season. There are a lot of teams that wish they were in the position to give Jordan Love that contract. And Green Bay is in the situation where they get to be the one. And it doesn't mean that it's going to work out perfect. Doesn't mean that it couldn't work out amazing, but we'll take it one step at a time. It was the right deal to make at the time, and you live with it, and you hope that he continues to progress, and you hope that it pays off big down the road, and that he gets a Super Bowl win out of it during that time, during that contract. And if so, it'll be far more than worth it than any of the money that they gave up in that deal. All right. Pratt's shown well every day with his opportunities for sure. Why I think it's a possibility. Totally get that. Richard, if Josh Myers and Creed Humphrey switch places, do you think Josh Myers would have been more successful in KC? No, I think just Creed Humphrey is that much better than him. Do you agree with my thoughts that all 11 draft picks will make the 53? We know Goody hates to cut his draft class. I do. I think the only opportunity here would be potentially if Marshawn Lloyd ends up on IR to start, but that still to me is making the roster. So I think all of them end up on the roster on the 53 or on IR. All right, what else we got here? Another super chat. Is it Mr. Guestford again? Oh no, here we go. Arian. Andy, you're the best Packers content creator. Appreciate you. Arian, really appreciate that a ton. It is a loaded sphere. We are very blessed as Packer fans. I consider myself blessed as a Packer fan with all the other stuff that's out there. It is phenomenal. And let me just say, like, you go out and you try to find stuff on other teams, and it's somewhat difficult at times to find updates on Twitter and on, just good articles on other teams. And we are very spoiled as Packer fans. So, Arian, the fact that you even put me in that conversation, I appreciate a ton. I love what I do. I hope that my passion shines through. I'm not perfect. There are things that people can do in just about every atmosphere, every range better than me. Tom Grassi's far more entertaining and funny than I am. Ben Fennell, amongst others, can break down film better than I can. Dusty Evely, another one, can break down film better than I can. Aaron Nagler is just sort of the total package of can do a little bit about everything. I think Peter Bukowski can speak more intelligently than I can. But I think there's things that I do well in every one of those areas. And of course, there's a lot of others as well. The beat writers do a phenomenal job of breaking news and stories and writing far better than I can write. But I like to think that I can do all of those things pretty well. Maybe not any one of them better than maybe somebody else can do it. But I always hope that my passion shines through, and I hope that I can do all of those things well enough that it comes together and makes it a semi-intelligible conversation every single day. But we are very, very blessed as a fan base to have so many great people to follow day in and day out. And like I said, I appreciate you putting me even in the conversation with so many great people that are out there. All right. Heartbroken Hog. Let's go back here. We may not need a special teams guys much this year for defending returns. I expect a lot of kicking out of the back of the end zone with the new rules. That might be the case, Heartbroken Hog. But remember, they could change the rules at any time. They've said they might change the rules on the kickoff. If all of a sudden every team's just kicking it out, they might change it and say, hey, if you kick it out, it's going to go to the 40 or more likely the 35. But they might say, we want returns. So, like, I'm really interested to see how this gets played out. But just because it's the rule now doesn't mean it's going to be the rule week 3, week 5. And that's a really interesting dynamic here. So you can't just base your roster based on what those kickoff rules are now, because they do have the ability to change. As of right now, who do you think deserves to be quarterback 2 and kicker? I would say I would probably lean towards, that's such a tough question. I would go with Michael Pratt at QB. I think that one's easier for me, but I don't think it's cut and dry. And I think the Packers have put Clifford ahead of Pratt all preseason. So that and off season. So that makes it tough, but I would go with Pratt. And I honestly really was kind of hoping for Cade York, but obviously he just got traded to Washington. So that's kind of done. To me, it is now Greg Joseph's out of the conversation, in my opinion, because we always knew, like, if Greg Joseph was like 3% ahead of Anders Carlson, it was still going to be Anders Carlson, right? And now Greg Joseph is like 2% behind Anders Carlson, or if not more, right? So I think Greg Joseph has not done enough, and he's trending in the wrong direction, that it is now Anders Carlson or the field, meaning somebody that's not on the roster right now. So I would lean towards Anders Carlson. If it were me, do I think I might take a chance at somebody else? I think I might, but I understand sticking with Anders and hopefully just goes out and has a really nice preseason game this week and kicks well in practice next week and makes it easy. But that's going to be a difficult decision. But my guess is they keep both quarterbacks and Anders at the moment, but tomorrow could go a long way in defining some of that. How many times do you think? Oh, we did that one, Jade. Sorry about that. Let's see. Mosby, Rochelle, Welch, Heath, Sims, or Davis, Sapp, Jones, Telford, Ford, Jennings, Banks. None probably make the team, but all could be good depth for the practice squad. I think that might be your biggest takeaway for Wednesday. All right. We all look at Tuesday as the deadline day. What you want Wednesday is that none of these guys get claimed and you can get as many of them as possible back on the practice squad. Because if so, I think Green Bay could have a really strong and deep 70-man team, not just 53. So whoever they end up cutting, whoever it ends up being, hope that those guys clear waivers and hope they all come back to the practice squad. Because again, I think you could have a very deep roster. After week 6, what is the Packers record? I think they'll start 4-2. Andy, we seem to own practice yesterday. Us versus Denver. Is the Ravens defense not as good as Denver's? Last year, they set NFL records in defense. I think, Dan, I think I'm hoping I'm understanding your question correctly here. What I would say is like, this is why you don't put stock into who won or lost a practice. Winning or lose, there is no winning or losing a practice. It's not a zero-sum game. Players are working on their craft. They're working on their technique, and they're not trying to go out and beat the other team in a practice. You can't do it. It's impossible. So yes, Denver outplayed Green Bay in practice. Green Bay outplayed Baltimore. Do I think that that's going to mean that this regular season, Denver is going to be the best and then followed by Green Bay, followed by Baltimore? Hell no. I think Baltimore and Green Bay are going to be very good. I don't think Denver is going to be that good at all, but you never know. And that's just, again, why this is practice. And Allen Iverson would say it best. We're talking about practice, but it's not a zero-sum game. It's not a cohesive back and forth battle. It's just plays that you're trying to execute. You're not game planning for those. You're having in the preseason game a bunch of backups versus starters. It is not real life. It is not real life at all. It is fiction. We made it up. I know you know the meme I'm thinking of, but yeah. So that's what I would say. Don't put too much stock into it one way or the other. Donald, could the Packers not have a place kicker on the initial 53 and then look for the best choice on waivers? Carlson, Joseph, or someone cut by another team? Would they consider doing something similar at long snapper? Yes, I think that is possible. I don't think it's likely at kicker. Remember, they did do that at long snapper. I predicted it, and that was like the one thing that I think came right. But I said I wouldn't shock me if they cut both long snappers and then brought one back at some point. I don't think they have any fear that they're going to lose Matt Orzik on waivers, nor do I maybe think that they care. But I think they could theoretically, if they were really pinched in roster spots and need something. But you have to remember, again, this would be more of like, do you want to cut Matt Orzik and then get a player on IR and then bring Orzik back? And it allows you to keep an extra player that way. But they probably don't have to do that with the new IR rules. So I think it's probably a little less likely. But if they saw somebody that got cut earlier in the day, could they go that route? Maybe. They could just try to trade for that player too, to make sure that they don't have to try to battle for waivers. If there was really a kicker that they really liked, like trade a 2027 conditional 7th round pick. Like who cares at that point? So I think they could look at something like that too, but it's always possible. Goody is very creative when it comes to cut down day. So never put anything past him because he will find ways to get stuff done. Let's see. Kevin, thoughts on coaches are eligible for the Hall of Fame now only having to wait 1 year instead of 5. Think it's good for older coaches now like Belichick, Shanahan, Carroll to get in before they pass away. Kevin, I honestly did not even see that. So you are breaking this news to me. I will say I don't really care about the Hall of Fame all that much. I think it was awesome that Leroy Butler got in. It was awesome that, Jerry Kramer got in and things like that. And it's a cool thing, but I don't know. It's fine. I focus my efforts, as you guys probably know, a little bit more on the current and the future of the team. And despite being a history major for my degree, I don't go back all that often and look at what's happened in the past, but it seems like a good idea. And if those coaches have the opportunity to make it to the Hall of Fame sooner, good for them. And certainly Bill Belichick is rightful to be there sooner rather than later. Baby QB, good to see you. Hi, Andy. Are you more worried about the Philly game with their recent wide receiver acquisition? I really like Jahan Dotson. I think he's been underutilized in Washington, and I think that's a really good landing spot for him. So I think he can be a good piece. My guess is he's probably not like just off and running week one in Philadelphia's offense. So it doesn't really move the needle for me one way or the other, but I do think it makes them a better team down the road and gives them more weapons. And that is a team that is loaded with weapons. So I think it's a really good move for Philly. A little bit of a head scratcher for Washington, although I think somebody posted a Reddit thread of like every wide receiver that's been traded, every first round wide receiver that's been traded in like the last like 20 years or something. And like the only one that's had success has been Amari Cooper. So it's not a flattering list of players at wide receiver round one that go traded in their first contract. It usually doesn't end well, but I do like the move for Philly. I really do. I think he's a good player. Let's see what else we got here. Ian Lowe, how good do you think Evan Williams will be? Should we get excited for him? These are always going to be my words of this sort of situation. Let's just pump the brakes a little bit. I think we're all excited about what he can potentially be. Preseason and regular season, not the same. And it's all fun and games until you start making a couple of mistakes in regular season. And then everyone wants to turn on you and be like, this guy sucks. That's why he was a 4th round pick. Green Bay never should have moved up for him. I think he's really smart. I think he's got great ball skills. I think a lot of people maybe will see like Micah Hyde. I see some Justin Simmons here with Evan Williams. I really do. I think he can be a really good safety in this league. And I'm not saying he's going to live up to that expectation. I don't want to put that out there for him because that's a very lofty expectation, but I see a little bit of Justin Simmons in his game. And Justin Simmons, I think was a third round guy, if I remember, late third. But either way, I think Evan Williams has the opportunity to be a good player, but let's just let him develop at his own pace. We have been very excited about draft picks early in camp and preseason in the past, and they go a different direction. Josh Jackson is a great example of that. Remember, he had that big pick 6 in preseason, and everyone thought that Josh Jackson was going to be this next big thing, and he wasn't a thing at all. And again, then everyone turns and is like, this guy sucks. Let's get rid of him, trade him, cut him, etc. So these things take time. There was excitement about Devontae Adams until there wasn't, and then there was a lot again. So that like these are journeys for players. Right now, Evan Williams is off to a great start to his journey, and hopefully it just continues that way and he's a stud, and that'd be great. But this is probably going to be a journey too. There's probably going to be some hiccups along the way. Let's give him grace as he kind of maneuvers around through some of those. I'm sure what will be rookie hiccups like every rookie will experience. All right, Alex, happy Friday, Andy. Week 1 is so close yet so far away. I feel that very much. I'm looking forward to just getting everything set as we get ready for week 1. We got this great sort of preseason game Saturday, cut down day Tuesday, and then about a week and a half for that first game. We got college football already tomorrow, which is going to be great. College football next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it'll go very fast, and football's here. Like we've made it. The wait's over. We've made it. It's here, and we should all be excited about that. All right, what else we got? Dan, you think the Packers now hope Morgan tries to be the swing tackle this season? I don't think it's necessarily that. I do think that it's more likely now that Sean Ryan is the starter week 1. I think there's a chance that we see a similar rotation with Sean Ryan and Jordan Morgan that we saw with Sean Ryan and John Runyon Jr. last year, with maybe Morgan starting, to get 60% of the snaps and Morgan 40, or maybe it's 70-30. And then maybe that swaps or flips, not both of them combined, as time goes on. But I could definitely see that being a situation and giving him a little bit more time to progress rather than just throwing him into the fray against a really talented Philadelphia Eagles interior defensive line in week 1. So I'm more apt to say that Sean Ryan starts week 1, but I think they give him opportunities still to maybe rotate in at guard. And I still think they focus him at guard, but probably give him a little bit of swing tackle experience as well in some of those practices just to get him working out there. And he let us all have a meetup weekend of the home opener. I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can maybe put some stuff together for some meetups in season. We need change. What do you think's happened the last 2 off seasons? It's been a complete 180 in roster and cap situation. Very excited time to be a Packers fan. I'm not sure what I missed there, but yes, I do think, I do think that they've done a really nice job of building this roster, and Goody deserves a lot of credit. What else? Is there some infighting here? Do we have infighting? No infighting. Yes, the streak ends this year on Mark, as always. Prince, I don't know what that means. Exactly on the mark, Andy. Appreciate that, Omer. What's your thoughts on the new scheme and handling the run? Is getting upfield possibly going to cause gashes, or will the middle linebackers have to make sure they're on the spot and D-line rallying to the ball? I think you have that extra safety in the box a lot, which is really going to help with some of that. So you're allowing some additional penetration up front, which has the ability to, kind of disjoint and disorient a run. And if it doesn't, if they get past, then you have a wave of, 3 or 4 more players, depending on if you're a nickel or base, that can stop that. And even if they get by that, then you have Mr. Perfect cleanup, Xavier McKinney, to hopefully, clean up anything on the back end and limit it to a 10 to 12 yard run rather than a 60, 70 yard run. So I think there are going to be layers to it. And I think that they're going to be hopefully limiting those big explosive plays. But yes, if you play a more risky, aggressive style of football, there can be more reward for the offense. There can be more reward for you as well. But hopefully that ends up in more tackles for loss, more sacks, more pressures, more interceptions. And that, sort of counteracts maybe a couple of those big plays that they get through the course of the game. All right. What else? Just trying to go through my list here. Eating Pop-Tarts in your Newman jersey again. Oh my goodness. Guys, be nice. Kicker in Brazil, that's the best idea. Okay, no more fighting. What else? I'm going to see if we got an actual question. So here's we go. Happy Friday. See, is that so hard, guys? What are your thoughts on the division to this point of the preseason? I don't think we can glean much at this point. I think we're going to have to see how the Bears and the Vikings play come regular season. I think the McCarthy injury is brutal for Minnesota. And of course, the devastating Kyrie Jackson death as well is just absolutely awful. So that's a really tough, situation for Minnesota with those 2 draft picks. And obviously one being far more devastating than the other. Not trying to compare the two, of course, but yeah, I think that's tough, but I think Minnesota has a lot of depth and a lot of talent. It's just how good can Sam Darnold be? And I don't think we're going to know until the regular season. And I think it's going to take for a little bit for us to recognize too, like what does a regular season Caleb Williams look like? I think we're going to see a lot of explosive plays. I think we're going to see him have a little bit of a learning curve there as well. But I still think this is Detroit and Green Bay's division, but I think Chicago and Minnesota can make it. I think both teams can be a pain in the ass. Let me put it that way. How far of a jump do you think Jordan and the offense will take this season? Ian, I'm just kind of hoping that they have a very similar approach that they did at the end of last season against the Cowboys and some of those last couple regular season games. I just want to see them be consistent week in and week out. I think that's the jump that they need to take. I don't think you're going to see an offense that's putting up 40 some points every week, but can they be a 27 point performer week in and week out? I think this team is good enough to do that. And that's what I want to see is just not necessarily take a leap in talent or in, big time play, but can they just be that consistent offense every week where if the defense goes out and, the defense allows 19, 20 points per week, the offense is going to win those, they're going to go 14-3 because they're going to put up more than 20 points, on 14 different occasions. So that's what I want to see is just consistency from this offense. Sorry if I missed this, Shane. I should have got to this earlier. I don't mean to ruin your question here, Shane. This is the one question I have no answer to because I live in Green Bay. I never have to stay in hotels in Green Bay. So I don't think I've ever stayed in, I think I stayed in a hotel in De Pere once, on my wedding night. I think that's the only time that I've ever stayed in a hotel in the Green Bay area. So I can't answer that question. A loft seems nice. I don't know. Hotel Northland seems nice. I've never been there. The one right across from Lambeau that I can't think of the name at the moment. Lodge Kohler. That seems very nice. Never been there, at least in staying there in a room. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I really do, but I unfortunately do not. So I apologize for that. What else we got? Those pizzas look good. If you haven't got Luigi's yet, you need to check them out. This is my first week working at a new school. All the security guards and half the teachers are Bears fans. This is going to be a fun year. Get after them. Wear that Packer stuff as much as you can. Let's see. I'm going to be at our home opener and parking at Ticket King. The Green Bay Distillery would be a great place for a meetup. We did that last night. It was a lot of fun. I think we probably had about 20 different people show up through the course of the night. Great conversation. Really, really fun time. Really appreciated everyone who showed up. And like I said, we had a lot of great conversations on a lot of different topics and it was just really great getting to meet everyone. So we'll definitely do more in the future. I don't know, to the extent or when or why or how, but we'll definitely do more in the future. Andy, you have a chance for a hotel sponsor, dude. By the way, I bought a Luigi's pizza because we love you, Dan. I appreciate that a ton. It's not worth. It's not. I'm not selling you on any anything bad here. Luigi's is awesome. It's legitimately, guys, it's a great pizza. I would be saying that even if they weren't sponsoring me. It is my favorite frozen pizza, period, end of story. Nothing even in the conversation. I don't think they have a gluten-free. I'll have to talk to him about that. Hampton Inn on Oneida is convenient to Lambeau and the airport. Good to know. Andy, do you think Detroit would actually trade for Adams? Yeah, I could see that. I hope they don't, but I could see that happening. Thoughts on making a video of you eating a Luigi's pizza? I don't see that happening. I don't think anyone just needs me housing a 16-inch pizza at any given moment. That's only going to come back to haunt me. Let's see. What do you think about trading Nixon if he stays inconsistent and gets outplayed by Bullard? I don't see that happening. I think at worst he's going to be the dime, even if Bullard eventually ends up winning the nickel, and he's going to be a hopefully all pro kick returner again. So I don't see any way. And I think he's really a core guy in this team too, like from a locker room and just getting these guys hyped. I think he's an important piece to this team. Now, whether he ends up being an important piece at slot corner will remain to be seen, but I don't see him going anywhere. All right. I'm going to answer one more I'm reading pizza. One more question before we get out. Totally great sauce. I'm going to answer one more question before I get out of here. Let's see. What do I want to answer here? I don't want to answer. This won't be my last one. Predictions on the Jets this year. I'll say don't ever take my advice on anything, but I would bet the under on the Jets. I think they're going to have complications. I'll just put it that way. Maybe they end up with 9 wins, but it wouldn't surprise me if they ended up not making the playoffs. Kevin, you are more than welcome. I am very hungry, actually. I could absolutely go for Luigi's pizza right now. All right, we'll end with this one. So, Turtles, how has Chris Russell been looking? I'll say that I don't think Chris has much of a really any chance to make the 53. Maybe he can get in a practice squad conversation. But man, he got in for like 8 plays, maybe less, 6 or 7 plays in the last game, and immediately made 3 really good plays. I think 2 or 3 tackles or 2 tackles and another good play. I forget what it was off the top of my head, but he had like 3 really nice plays in like a 6 snap period, which is not common. So good for him. Let's see if he can go out and follow it up this week. And he probably doesn't get a ton of playing time in this one either, but he made a nice little highlight package in those 3 plays that he got in. To me, Kraft is looking awesome. He's going to be really, really good. And then Musgrave's coming along just fine. I think it's been a quiet training camp for him, but I think he's going to be completely fine once they start game planning and putting, an actual plan in place for the regular season. He's still going to be a stud in this offense, I think. So no concerns there. All right, friends, that is going to do it for me. I appreciate you guys a ton. Go get yourself some Luigi's pizza. I'll be back here before you know it. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a pre-post game tomorrow. Probably do something probably post game once I get back, maybe a little bit after, but might do something live tomorrow. Maybe I get busy and it doesn't happen, but hopefully I'll do a post game show at some point tomorrow. Enjoy the game, everyone. Pre-game show should be up there for members before you know it. And of course, it'll be out there. I'll probably post it at midnight tonight. Just because of a noon game. If I post it at 5 a.m., there's less time for people to view it. So likely it will be out early in some capacity. Hope you guys all have an amazing, incredible weekend. I will see you all soon. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.